The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John.
Glory to you.
Jesus went to the Mount of Olives at daybreak. He appeared in the temple again. And as all the people came to him, he sat down and began to teach them. The scribes and Pharisees brought a woman along who had been caught committing adultery, and making her stand there in full view of everybody. They said to Jesus, "Master, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. And Moses has ordered us in the law to condemn women like this to death by stoning. What have you to say against? What have you to say?" They asked him this as a test, looking for something to use against him. But Jesus bent down, started writing on the ground with his finger. As they persisted with their questions, he looked up and said, "If there is one of you who has not sinned, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." Then he bent down and wrote on the ground again. And when they heard this, they went away one by one, beginning with the eldest, until Jesus was left alone with the woman, who remained standing there. He looked up and said, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No, sir," she replied. "Neither do I condemn you," said Jesus. "Go and do not sin anymore." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Our readings today really speak about the radical nature of Jesus' mission and message. And it's radical. It is different. In a way to prep for it, in our first reading, where we're reading through in Lent, we're reading through salvation history. And this passage from Isaiah, I think, is such a beautiful way to interpret the gospel reading. No need to recall the past. No need to think about what was done before. "See, I am doing a new deed. Even now, it comes to light. Can you not see it?" Can you not see it? Can you not see it? When we hear the gospel message, so often it's clouded by so many things that we know and so many things that we think and so many things that we see and understand. But to hear it in the context of a first century Jew and to look at it again, to recognize the radical nature of the message. Indeed, he is doing a new thing. And this new thing means that the sins of our past aren't really what should preoccupy us. What should preoccupy us is the sins we do now and of the future. In our reading, we see Jesus in the Mount of Olives at daybreak. He goes into the temple. And so this is a teaching that is happening in the temple. He's sitting as a teacher would. And there they bring to him this woman who was caught committing adultery. That's the first thing we know about the woman. And then the story goes on. They made her stand in the center, in full view of everyone. Well, because adultery is a capital crime, she's standing as an accused in the center where everyone can see. Because this is a capital crime. In the books of Deuteronomy, an adulteress is to be stoned to death. It's the only capital crime where they actually said how the person must be put to death. For not honoring your mother and father, that's a capital crime. There are a number of things that today we look at. No, people used to be dying for them before. Huh? Now, if adultery was a capital crime in Trinidad and Tobago today, I'm not sure why the laughter here. Help me, somebody explain to me what is going on. I'm completely lost here today. If adultery was a capital crime in Trinidad and Tobago today, I wonder what the number of the population will read at after that. But this is a capital crime. So then they come and they say, so she's standing in the middle, in full view of everyone. And they say, Master, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now, I don't know if Olio could help me on this. In the very act, well, talk about a smoking gun. But the problem they have now is, if she was caught in the very act of committing adultery, where is the man with whom she was doing this act with? Because adultery needs two to tango. Where is the man? And the law is also very clear. Both the man and the woman must be stoned to death. The law is clear on this one. So it's not just that the woman would be stoned to death. The man and the woman should be stoned to death if they were caught in the act of adultery. So by their own words, the woman was caught in the very act, and they continue. And Moses had ordered us in the law to condemn women like this to death by stoning. But the law also demanded that you condemn men who committed adultery to death by stoning also. So where is the other side of this equation is the first and most obvious gap that they have in this story. Because if she was accused of committing adultery, that's okay, well, maybe, hearsay evidence or whatever. But in the very act, there must be a man somewhere involved. The story goes on, and it takes some twists and some turns. What have you to say? Now, remember it says the scribes and the Pharisees wanted to trap him. And they wanted to trap him because this is a technical question now. If Jesus says you must obey the law, stone her to death, then the Romans had said that the Jews have no authority to put anyone to death. We know that from the trial of Jesus. When the high priest wanted to condemn Jesus, the high priest said to Pilate, our laws do not allow us to put anybody to death. So if Jesus says she must be stoned to death, then Jesus is going to be breaking the Roman law. And if he says, no, give the woman a bly, then he's breaking the Jewish law. So they think they have him in a tight pickle, because no matter what he says here, he's going to be breaking one of the laws, either the Roman law or the Jewish law. So their intention was not to get wisdom from the rabbi. Their intention was to entrap him in committing a crime against either the Roman law or the Jewish law. Jesus bent down and started writing on the ground with his finger. That's a curious thing to do, huh? You know, fine? He bends down and he just starts to doodle on the ground with his finger. Now, you know how much ink is spent on what Jesus wrote? Huh? Books and volumes on what did he write? The simplest one is, where is the man? That's the simplest one. Others say he was writing the sins of the scribes and the Pharisees. Others have all sorts of other theories. But Jeremiah has a passage where he speaks about the writing in the ground on the sins against the Lord, because you have exchanged the living God for cisterns that cannot hold water. And so some believe that this is really an interpretation of Jeremiah that is condemning the scribes and Pharisees. All of that is nice. But here's the real challenge to Jesus. Jesus had been speaking about mercy. He'd been speaking about mercy in ways that was unusual and unparalleled in his time. He had done some things on mercy with the healing of lepers and the healing of the blind, the healing of people, and on the Sabbath day showing mercy, which is breaking the Sabbath law. He had done mercy in ways that has been really unprecedented for any teacher in his time. And the real question to Jesus is how significant is this law of mercy that you are teaching us? How important is this? Because here is a woman caught in the very act of committing adultery. Is mercy really that important? And if it is, dare to break the law. Dare to break the law. And this is still a question that we have today, What is the role of mercy in the Christian life? How do we understand the role of mercy? You see, when we come down on one side or the other, usually it's put as either justice or mercy. Justice requires the woman to be condemned. Mercy requires the woman to be freed of her sin. And it has to come down on one side or the other. Jesus actually fulfills both in what he does. But what he does is he puts mercy back at the center again and shows that mercy is really at the epicenter of the whole Christian tradition. It's not a sideshow. When Pope Francis came and issued a year of mercy, it was surprising for many people. In the 1950s and 60s, Catholicism did not speak much on mercy. You live by the rule, you live by the law, and if you did not, you felt the full brunt of the law. In one way, we had become a people, a community that enforced the social norms and regulations for the society and held them very, very strong. And there's something to be said about that. But what went was this sense of mercy at the very heart of the gospel message. So the real taunt, I think, here in this text is, how important is mercy for you? How important is it for you? Let's put you to the test. In the house of Matthew, when he was having dinner with the tax collectors, he said, go and learn the meaning of the law. What I want is mercy, not sacrifice. Go and learn the meaning of the law. What I want is mercy, not sacrifice. And there's so many instances. The prodigal son, which we had last week, who did everything. That's a centerpiece of his teaching. How important is mercy? That's the question, not only of the text, That's a question for the Catholic today. And in this year of Jubilee, where extraordinary mercy is being given by the church to all of her people, we have to ask the question in a very direct way: how important is mercy? Now, if this was Trinidad, the poor woman standing up in the center, what would people around be doing? I'm not hearing you all. What would people around be doing? What would they be doing? Everybody would have enough to say, not so? I know that woman, she up to no good. Everybody would have a story to tell about the poor woman. Correct? Correct? And the shame, just think of the shame of this woman caught in the very act of committing adultery, standing up. Well, I don't know what she had on, but anyhow, she's standing up in the middle of everybody, and everybody has something to say about her. What does that feel like? What does that feel like? Shame. That's extreme shame. Extreme shame. What does Jesus do? He bends down and he starts to write on the ground with his finger. And they persisted with their question. And he looked up and said, "If there's one of you who has not sinned, let them be the first to throw the stone at her." Now that's wisdom. The interesting thing is, they started walking away from the elders first. I don't understand that. Those who are older than me, help me now. They started walking away from the elders first. Whatever he was writing on the ground and whatever was happening, they were convicted that they too were sinners. Now, Moses never imposed a law that you must be innocent to be able to throw a stone, but Jesus has. And whoever is without sin, let them be the first to cast the stone. Thank God Mary wasn't in the crowd. She's the only one who would have qualified, but would not have. And what does that teach us? How many times have we been the first to throw a stone? Sorry, I'm not hearing anybody today. Is something I'm saying? Is me? Is something I'm saying? How many have we been the first to throw a stone? A verbal stone. How many have we been the first? How many times have we been the first to speak people bad who clearly did stupidness in their life? How many times? How many times have we gossiped over the misfortune of another person who really did stupidities? How many times? Have we called up somebody to say, yeah, so and so? And it's juicy. So you can't refrain yourself. You have to say it to somebody because you will bust if you don't say it. How many times? The law of mercy starts here. If you are without sin, you throw the first stone. But if you are with sin, how dare you? How dare you? How dare you? I remember when in the plane with the journalist, somebody asked Pope Francis a question about gay people, and he said, "Who am I to judge?" Well, that lit up a whole pile of people who said, "But you're the Pope, you're supposed to judge." And they missed the message. which is judging is for God, is not my role. The sin, yes, the person, no. How do we understand in this year of mercy, how do we understand in this Jubilee year that the condemnation of other people, even if we believe they absolutely deserve it, is really not a Christian response? Are you hearing me? How do we communicate and live this law of not being the one to throw a stone? And if other people are throwing a stone, what is the role of the Christian? What's the role of the Christian? But you see, we'll be nervous to say, Olia without sin too, because we're afraid we get the stone then. Correct? We be afraid, because then the stones come into us. Gandhi once said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth would lead a half-blind, toothless world. And it's true. So what Jesus teaches here is, I think, is very important. We have to hear the whole teaching. It's not just that he doesn't condemn. What he does is he helps the people who are there to come to a consciousness that they too are in sin and therefore should not be throwing a stone at anybody else. Somehow he does that in his interaction, in what he writes. I wish I knew what he writes, but okay. But in what he did, the net result was the crowd recognized they wanted blood. They wanted this woman shamed, completely stoned to death. And whatever he does, he gets the message back to the accusers that they too are in peril and that they too are in need of mercy. And therefore they too walk away. One by one, starting with the oldest verse. You know, many people have seen this text as a scandal because Jesus is breaking the law, they think. But he's smarter than that. Because when he ends up, it ends up with him and the woman alone. And he says to them, he says to her, he looked up, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? As if he don't know. Where are they? Has no one condemned you? No, sir, she replied. Now, according to the law, it requires 2 witnesses to condemn someone. And at that stage, he's by himself. So according to the law, he cannot condemn her because they don't have another witness. And in fact, he was not a witness, he heard. So you needed 2 of them to stay to accuse her for him to condemn her. So he's not breaking the law because according to the law, you cannot condemn, especially not for a capital crime, based on the testimony of one person. Nobody is there. Nobody is there. So he doesn't break the law. Man bright, eh? No, that's real bright, eh? That's real bright. He's not breaking the law. But he does something else. If the story stopped there, it would be scandalous in other ways. He continues on and says, go away and do not sin anymore. Go away and do not sin anymore. The law of mercy that Jesus preaches, exemplifies, lives. I mean, think of the men that he called to be part of his grouping. He called a zealot. They were hot-headed revolutionaries. He calls Peter, who could get his 2 feet in his mouth at any moment. He called Nathanael, who said nothing good could come from Nazareth. He was prejudiced to the nth degree and couldn't see a country town like Nazareth producing anything worthwhile. He calls Judas, who had a love for money. He called Matthew, who is a tax collector, who was the worst of the sinners. Just by who he called, he shows that he is doing something very, very different from what the rabbis of that time was doing. And 2,000 years later, brothers and sisters, we cannot yet hear the law of mercy. We still find it difficult to hear the law of mercy. As our first reading says, no need to recall the past, no need to think about what was done before. See, I am doing a new deed. Even now it comes to light. Can you not see it? Yes, I am making roads in the wilderness and paths in the wild. Can you not see it? The good news of Jesus Christ is the message that when you have been freed from your sins by Jesus Christ, there is no need to recall the past anymore. How many times have you, at some stage in your life, thought back at your stupidities of your youth, or of your old age for that matter, and really turn yourself inside out in shame and in guilt, and no mind you went to confession and you brought it to confession. No mind you asked God forgiveness. No mind you did all of that. You're still accusing yourself of what has been done, although you have repented for what has been done. Oh, not y'all. Not y'all. Y'all don't do them kind of stupid things. All you're more spiritually wise than that. Correct? And the message here is that if you have brought this to the sacrament of reconciliation, and this is a jubilee year, and you do what is required for a plenary indulgence, this jubilee year, then please, I beg you, let it go. Let it go. Do not condemn yourself anymore, because you are the accusers in this text for yourself. You put yourself in the middle and you gang up around and you start accusing you of the stupidities you have done too. And when you do that to yourself, you're likely also to do it. And if we're going to live Christianity, do unto others as you would. So you have to first forgive you. And when you can forgive you, then you will start learning how to forgive others also. Go and learn the meaning of the law. What I want is mercy, not sacrifice.